Morning, everybody. We're just letting the participants trickle in here, and we will be started in about 15, 20 seconds. Thanks, everybody, for joining this morning. All right. Again, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I know we'll have participants trickling in for the next few minutes, but do want to get us started here on time. Thank you for joining us for this conversation on early learning. We have an awesome webinar set up with some of the experts from around the state that are leading this issue from both the business perspective, the policy perspective, and the nonprofit perspective. So to give us his first thoughts and kind of open it, I want to welcome Charles Hokanson, Senior Vice President at the Helios Foundation. Charles is not only a good friend of the Florida Chamber, he is a board member of the Florida Chamber and somebody who has a vested interest and has worked for a long time in education policy at both a national and state level. So Charles, I'd love for you to give some opening thoughts from Helios. And thank you again for sponsoring this webinar. We greatly appreciate your partnership in helping bring this information to life.
Well, thank you, Kyle, and thank you for the introduction, for the longstanding partnership Helios had with the Florida Chamber Foundation. I'm just going to start my remarks by saying each day we know that business is becoming increasingly competitive. Each day we know we need more highly educated and skilled individuals to fuel those competitive businesses. And yet each academic year, a large percentage of our students are not being deemed kindergarten ready, meaning that they're lacking the fundamental skills to meet academic and social benchmarks for learning. Unfortunately, far too many of these students are students from first-generation backgrounds, students of color, those from low-income backgrounds, and it's important that we focus on that issue. Closing education achievement gaps is not only an imperative for teachers and administrators, it's an imperative for business. At Helios Education Foundation, we're committed to supporting all students along the education continuum to reach their full potential and engage in productive careers. And at Helios, we focus on 3 milestones that serve as predictors to student success: third grade reading, college readiness, and college completion. And Helios invests in support systems that are aimed at each of those milestones. Our early learning and early grade partnerships strive to ensure students start their academic journey kindergarten ready and to be able to read at grade level by 3rd grade. Our partnerships in the K-12 space support students by coaching them on the college knowing and going process while in high school, and providing other supports so that they're prepared academically and financially for college. And then when students enter college, we invest in post-secondary partnership, encourage persistence and completion. Investment is just one aspect of the work that we do at Helios. We know that funding alone is not going to accomplish all of these goals. We have to have impactful partnerships, and we do. I'm going to list a couple. Our statewide partner, the Children's Movement of Florida, with support from Helios, has recently engaged in a series of statewide Real Talk focus groups to hear from parents and practitioners about reforms needed to improve our early learning and childcare system. Our partnership with the Florida Children's Council, now Florida Association of Children's Trusts, Children's Councils and Trusts, supported creation of the Florida Grade Level Reading Campaign, with an overarching goal to maximize the efforts of local communities and statewide organizations to ensure that Florida's children read on grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And partnerships like we've had with the Florida Chamber Foundation is an example of collaboration between education and business, recognizing that each depends on the other in helping to solve some of the critical issues that the state has. I want to conclude with just a quote from an article that I pulled out recently, going back and thinking about how childcare is a business issue. And it's from the Harvard Business Review, April of 2021. The authors wrote, "Childcare is not a family issue, it is a business issue. It affects how we work, when we work, and for many, why we work." The authors even go on to say that increasingly in the future, it's going to influence where we work. And the authors also note that it is up to businesses to think creatively about ways to build the childcare infrastructure that we need to help working parents keep working for their families and the economy as a whole. And with those sort of thoughts, I want to introduce this panel. Helios is very proud to be sponsoring a panel on addressing child and family care to tackle Florida childhood poverty, the issues between business and our economy, and education and preparing students to function well in that economy are so crucial. And we look forward to working with many of you today that are online to improve outcomes for Florida's children. And with that, back to you, Kyle. Thank you.
Thanks, Charles. I appreciate that so much. Obviously, here at the Florida Chamber Foundation and Florida Chamber of Commerce, it is a continuum. Our research hopefully and does each year influence our policy, and our policy experts are at the Capitol each and every day working with legislators to make sure that good policy comes to life. I actually want to bring one of those policy leaders to the stage right now to introduce this panel. It's our Vice President of Government Affairs, Carolyn Johnson.
She files passion projects and is all in for the policy that she is advancing. She has championed wide-ranging policy issues from increasing caseworkers for child welfare services, regulating how companies use personal data online, support for mothers and babies through expanded postpartum Medicaid coverage, and special services for premature babies. She currently serves as the chair of the Transportation and Modals Subcommittee. Representative McFarland is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, where she served for 8 years as a surface warfare officer. In 2016, she joined the U.S. Navy Reserves and has continued to deploy around the world. In her civilian capacity, Fiona worked for the business management consulting firm McKinsey, and she has 2 boys and is soon to have another child on her way. Not sure how she manages all of that, but she's just a total rock star. We are thrilled that Representative McFarland is
Well, it looks like we might have lost Carolyn's sound, but I feel like that's my intro. Thank you so much for an awesome introduction, Carolyn. The Chamber has been a huge partner of mine as I think about legislation and policy. And I will admit that when I am considering a bill idea or someone from the district brings to me a problem that they think I might solve, the Chamber is among one of my first calls, because you guys speak for employers. And that's super important for me as I view my new role as a lawmaker now. I'm really excited to join this panel this morning.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
just go to your computer.
Okay, Representative McFarland, you can hear me. Great. Yes, and thank you for being a part of this conversation. Obviously, I think the intro kind of speaks for my first question that I'm going to be asking you. But just tell us in a grand scale, why is childcare and access to childcare such an important issue for you?
Because I have 2 children and another on the way. We've done tremendous work in the Florida House and in the legislature with the governor's support around investment in K-12 education. But I'm about to have 3 children that are 3 years old and younger. And I bet many of the people on the line today can relate to this. But if you have a child under the age of 5 in your life, whether it's your own child or a grandchild or someone else, you know this story. It is a duct tape organization to try to take care of that child while you are working. I represent Sarasota. My husband and I are both working. And when we looked around for where to put our children in daycare so we could continue our jobs, I was shocked that infant care is not available. I'm still on the waiting list at 4 different providers in Sarasota. And where you do find a slot, the cost is astronomical. And that's no fault of the providers, right? If you are a daycare provider, employee costs are 80% of your costs, give or take. 80% of your cost basis is paying staff. That is a tough premise when we are in a state with under 2.5 unemployment. I think our latest rate is 2.3 unemployment. I can't pay a nanny in Sarasota under $25 an hour and expect to keep her for more than a weekend. And providers are struggling with that same thing. So between being a parent and being a business practitioner, that was the lens through which I looked at this problem and thought, surely there must be a solution out there somewhere.
No, Representative McFarland, I think that is so well put, because we do have this crossroads right now between, it's not just being able to afford it, although that is a crisis in and of itself. It's even when you can afford it, you cannot access it still. Those slots just aren't available. That increase in that workforce is just not coming to fruition. I think this is one of the more well-crafted pieces of legislation I've seen in my time. We'll talk a little bit about why that's the case and why I think you're such a rock star for the work you did. But in your own words, just tell us a little bit about this legislation.
Yeah, so the bill that I'm working on and that Kyle's referring to, I actually just presented it this morning in its first committee stop, and everyone gets it. And here's what the bill does. It creates a child care tax credit for employers in the state of Florida that want to help their employees with child care. Whether you're an employer that has an old conference room you want to turn into a daycare room, or you want to partner with a local child care provider to reserve spots for your employees, this bill would offer a tax credit for those employers that want to pony up. The second thing it does is it looks at those daycare centers, those child care providers, and tries to help them alleviate the cost of regulation and burdensome administration that has nothing to do with quality of education or safety of children. When I enrolled my 2-year-old, finally found a spot in a preschool, I marched little Graham up to orientation, and I had a stack of paper that I had to sign and fill out. It's 2023, we're still signing pieces of paper. And at the top of the form, it says the state legislature, in all of its abundant wisdom, has required us to inform you that it's flu season. That's it. Nothing about, getting a flu shot or preventative measures, just heads up, it's flu season. And I, as a parent, have to sign that piece of paper twice a year. I have not learned. I am not changing my behavior. I am not more prepared as a parent because of this piece of paper. But my daycare provider has to keep massive files in the back room, having every parent sign that piece of paper twice a year. That doesn't make sense. So that was one of the first things I got rid of. And then we built out the childcare tax credit portion. I worked hand in hand with employers. In Sarasota, we have 2 major employers that provide childcare, our hospital and a manufacturer. They did it because it made sense to them. They knew that they need to compete for employees and try to keep them. And if they could do it by finding a place for their child who's under the age of 5 to spend the day while their employee was working, they were going to do it. And so I asked them what would have been helpful for them. I also talked to other employers and other chamber members in Sarasota who said, yeah, we looked at providing daycare for our employees, but we were scared of the risk. We were scared of the liability of having children. We know how to deal with employees. We've got an HR department, but we were scared of the risk of having children on our campus. And that's the other thing this bill does. It says if you are an employer that wants to help out and do the right thing and build on-site childcare, we're going to give you a status, which our practitioners out there will be familiar with, called license exempt. It's the same status as we give religious institutions that have daycare, and it still makes sure that the teachers are trained and safe to be there, but it lessens some of the other regulation. And here's what I had in mind. I thought, all right, well, maybe some might view that as a risk, that we're reducing the level of regulation if an employer wants to build their own childcare. But you know what? Me as a parent, I'm happy to accept perhaps a little bit more risk when it comes to the type of center that I'm putting my child in. If I can commute with my kid every day, and I can pop down in between calls or on my lunch break and just check in and see that kid. I feel way better about being in the same building as my kid than I do about the huge level of regulation that we have in our childcare providers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Representative McFarland, I think one of the more underrated measures of your bill, but what makes it so unique, and even from a national perspective, when we look at what other states like Kentucky and Michigan have done that are great stepping stones, but not quite up to snuff of what we're doing here in Florida, is that tax credit monthly. And the way you've structured it, you are allowing large businesses and small businesses to take part equally. In other states, we see whether it's a corporate income tax exemption or other pieces, only large entities can actually take advantage of them. Here, if you're a business with 10 employees, you still have the same opportunity, and it will benefit you in the same way as if you are a business with 100,000 employees. Tell us why it was so important, especially in this moment right now, to make sure that all businesses really have a level playing field when it comes to participating in supporting their employees getting high quality childcare.
I love your careful reading of this bill. It's like an 80-page bill, and you've noticed the nuance of it. So one of the concerns that I had as I was talking to different employers was, what's to stop Walmart from coming in and taking advantage of this tax credit and then eating up the whole tax credit? We had to put numbers on things, so I've set it at $7.5 million. Of total tax credit per year to the state of Florida, right? Because we got to size these things. So what's to stop Walmart of coming in and asking for a $7.5 million tax credit and eating up all the money for everyone else? I was like, that's a very, very valid concern. So we bounded it, and to say that if you are a large employer, so if you have over 500 employees, the max tax credit that you could eat up in 1 year is $600,000. And then we scale it by number of employees who are taking advantage of this. And I will add that it's not just employees' children, but it's employees' grandchildren as well who could take advantage of this. Also includes foster children, anyone who's in a guardian status. My view is that if you've got a child under the age of 5, you need all the help you can get. So we're gonna pony up the state of Florida to say we're partnering with you.
And that was the other thoughtful piece too, is that, you looked at this not just from the singular parent definition perspective. You looked at it from the guardian perspective, because we know here in Florida, we have a lot of elderly individuals taking care of grandchildren, or, to the point you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like that village raising a child model. I know my mother moved to be closer to my sister to help raise her grandchildren, because it is very, very difficult. Like you and your husband, they are 2 full-time working parents, and that can be difficult even if you have the resources. You talked about a little bit about where it stands today, and I think, and we've told you this, I think this can really be a national model for replication across the country. But here in Florida, if all goes according to plan and everything works out well and we're able to pass this great piece of legislation this year, what does the future look like? Is there the opportunity to expand? And I'm not even asking about tangible legislation in the future, but I guess that momentum of supporting our families accessing high quality childcare. Yeah,
so I'll speak to twofold. Is one, the approach that we've taken here in Florida when it comes to childcare is not to make mandates, right? I mentioned my hospital and my manufacturing company in Sarasota that made the decision to partner on childcare. It's not the right decision for everyone. And so to me, mandates was the wrong approach. And mandates also wouldn't solve the problem of availability of slots in daycare centers, right? So it needed to go beyond that. The second thing is what I hope is Act 2 of this bill. Kyle certainly noticed this in his careful reading of all 80 plus pages. But I really cared very much about the cost of providing childcare for providers. I mentioned that 80% of their cost is on staff and finding and keeping qualified staff. I'm not a minimum wage kind of person. I will do everything I can to reduce that cost. So we've done some creative things around time for background screening, around who pays to have these teachers go through the credentialing that's required. I'm helping as much as I can from a lawmaker's perspective on that side of finding employees. But I'll return back to what I said at the top about the cost of administrative burden. If you work in a regulated industry, you will be very familiar with this. But in the state of Florida today, if you are a child care provider, you get inspected 3 times a year, and you are inspected on 437 points of inspection. It's crushing. There's no way you can look at me with a straight face and tell me all 437 of those points of inspection contribute to quality of education or safety of the child. So what we've asked for the Department of Children and Families to do is to look at all of those points of inspection and tell me which ones actually contribute to safety and quality, and sort of do a scrub. And then maybe we can go even further and we can look at our providers who have a track record of success. They've had a clean inspection record for over 2 years, and maybe we can give them an abbreviated inspection schedule and just look at those indicators that are really sort of where's there's smoke, there's fire. And we can really give them an abbreviated inspection cycle. Department of Children and Families is totally on board with this. All of our providers are on board with this. I'm a parent, I'm also on board with it. I really do think that will drive down, again, we're only talking about like 20% of a cost base for a childcare provider, but if we can help there, let's do it.
Well, and to that point, it's brought up here in the chat, and it's brought up everywhere. Teacher shortage. That 20% can help to go back in supporting whether it's benefits, whether it's wages, whether it's lifestyle fringe benefits for employees. Really helping stem that shortage. So, Representative McFarland, this has been an excellent conversation. I have one final question for you, and it's kind of a repeat of everything we've talked about today. But briefly, summarize. If you're a business leader within your community, if you are a policy leader within your community, if you're just a community leader and you care about working parents and you care about children, why should you support this bill?
When the tech startups were all the rage, people were falling all over themselves to provide like hacky sacks and bean bags and ping pong tables. This is the new ping pong table in the workspace. Why don't you, as an employer, that you're looking over all your vacant spots, why don't you think about offering childcare benefits? Why don't you reach out to your local childcare provider and say, hey, if I pay for your advertising costs every year, would you save a couple slots for my employees' kids? And I bet you that you will attract more indifferent employees and you'll keep them for longer.
Yeah, and Representative McFarland, that is a perfect way to end it. It's almost like you set up my brief presentation here, because we don't have to bet. It's actually a fact. We're about to release some brand new statistics on working parents, the challenges that they're having, how many individuals are out of work because of the lack of access to childcare. And thank you so much. You are doing a lot of incredible work up there, but this one is obviously near and dear to the heart of the Florida Chamber. So we thank you for being a great partner, and we'll be with you till the end on this one.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Again, I do want to thank Representative McFarland for taking her time today. As she mentioned, she was in committee this morning. It is a very busy session up here, so we really appreciate her taking the time. And obviously, if we have some questions in the chat, we will make sure to try to get them to her and her team. As we move on, we just wanted to set up our brief our conversation next with talking about the state of childcare here in the state of Florida. If we jump to the next slide, I want to give a brief background, because we get asked this question a lot. Why does the Florida Chamber care about this? World that I get to oversee here at the Florida Chamber, when we're talking about equality of opportunity and early learning and childhood poverty, people always ask, this seems like more of a social issue, it's less of a business issue, why is the Chamber here? Well, in 2016, we started this process called the 2030 Blueprint. While I wasn't an employee of the Chamber at the time, I actually had the honor of serving as a consultant on this project. And what the Chamber did was brilliant. They went across the state, they found the leading experts, and they said, what are those key issues to build our economy? The goal was, the North Star was, how do we build the 10th largest economy in the world? But you don't just get there without a plan. So what we did was we stated 39 different goals across 6 different pillars. And if we look at the next slide, what we'll see is that those goals range from everything from talent, supply, and education to infrastructure, growth, and leadership to quality of life. Some of these pieces, people go, yep, that's been in the Chamber's wheelhouse forever, that makes complete sense. But pieces like talent, supply, and education, especially when it comes to early learning, that was confusion for a long time. Well, if we jump to the next slide, we'll be able to talk about why it's so important. here are some of the latest statistics coming out. And when I mean latest, these are real time. These got released about 2 weeks ago, and it is from On the Ground, a survey period in mid-February here in Florida. The average cost of childcare per month for a Floridian is $1,251. That's about $15,000 a year, and it's about 25% of the median household income here in Florida. So if you're a working family making $60,000 a year, you have 2 kids under the age of 5, because that's what this child care cost is related to, with children under the age of 5, you could be paying up to half of your income on child care alone. In fact, right now, the number of Floridians that are not working because they are caring for a child that is not in one of these child care facilities or in an education facility is 336,806. We talk about wanting to make sure that we have enough employees in the job market. We have more open jobs than we do people looking for work. Well, there's more than 330,000 individuals that are dealing with this child care crisis. And what they've decided is it is more cost effective and more beneficial to their family to just stay at home and work for that child, with that child instead of actually working in a job. And by the way, that is the third leading reason why an individual is not at work in the state of Florida. The number 1 reason is I'm retired. The number 2 reason is an individual has a disability and they are not able to work. So if you think about it, it's one of the leading reasons that we can actually effectuate change on. And this one is a shocking statistic. 475,456 Floridians recently have changed their child care arrangements to save money. Now, again, we know costs across the board are rising right now, and inflation, while it is stemming a little bit, is still a challenge for many families. But this is the area they're looking to make that cost savings. And as we look at long-term investments in the state of Florida, it's really important that the cuts don't come here. And the next slide kind of previews why that's the case. 0 to 5 is when you really start to mold that brain development. By the age of 5, about 90% of your brain development has already occurred. And if we're not getting these children in the system at a young age, we're going to have negative long-term impacts. As we see right now, only 50% of our kindergartners are ready for kindergarten. Only 53% of our third graders are reading at grade level. And only 49% of our 8th graders are reading at grade level. And all of those figures are in red because they're trending in the wrong direction. By the way, shameless plug, if you want to go look at what this looks like in your community or even in your zip code or your school, check out the Florida Scorecard or the Florida Gap Map. All of these statistics are available there as well. Going to the next slide, I want to talk about why this is such an issue for also families that may face different challenges. Reading proficiency is negatively impacted depending on where you fall in the spectrum, both from a demographic standpoint and from an experience standpoint. So our economically disadvantaged children, and we focus on third grade reading here at the Florida Chamber a lot because that's when you go from from learning to read to reading to learn, AKA, a lot of the content you're going to be consuming, whether it's math, science, therefore, afterwards will be done through reading. 43% of our economically disadvantaged third graders are reading at grade level. 28% of our homeless third graders are reading at grade level. Only 26% of our English as a second language third graders are reading at grade level, and only 29% of our students with disabilities are at grade level. Again, I mentioned that this is also a different demographic challenge where we have major gaps. Only 76% of our Asian students are reading at grade level, 65% of our white students, 49% of our Hispanic, and 33% of our Black students. Solving this issue will also help close gaps, both when it comes to characteristics or issues that a family may face, as well as racial achievement gaps. If we jump to the next slide, here at the Florida Chamber, we are focused on our partnerships, and there's way too many to put on one slide, but I did want to note those on the page here. The children's movement was mentioned at the top by Charles Hokinson, and we'll actually have a slide on the children's movement here on the next page, but there are 0 to 5 leader when it comes to early learning, and our kindergarten readiness leader is one of our pillar leaders. We also have the Business Alliance for Early Learning, which is led by business leaders from across the state of Florida that work closely with the Florida Chamber Foundation to not only research these challenges, but help craft these policies that Representative McFarland and others are running. So I want to thank all of those leaders. And I did want to give one shout out for a really cool upcoming tool that will be displayed in the community here soon. So if we look at the next slide, the Children's Movement is getting ready to launch their guide to family-friendly workplaces in Florida. In this, any business leader can read, use, and look for various case studies on what best practices are occurring across the state and what they've led to within those businesses. I had the honor of serving as an advisory panelist for this toolkit, and what I can tell you is they did an extensive job going around the state, talking to parents, talking to teachers, talking to businesses, and learning what are the needs and what is being done to overcome those challenges. This is going to be released imminently. I would expect that it'll be out within the next month. And if you want, please do let us know either in the comments or in a follow-up email. If you want to get access to this, we'll be sure to connect you with the Children's Movement. Thank you again, everybody, for listening to this part of it. And now I'm really excited to set up the next conversation. What we've heard from today is a philanthropic leader in Helios and what they're doing on the ground and what they're doing to support families across the state of Florida and nonprofits. We've heard from a policy leader on the great work that can be done to allow businesses to be more engaged in this process. But now we're going to hear directly from a business themselves. And if we jump to the next slide, Advent Health is truly one of the state's leaders when it comes to supporting, you know what, I'm going to say it frankly as it is, putting their money and their mission where their mouth is. And what they've done at the West Lakes Early Learning Center is absolutely incredible. So I want to invite Alfreda Clark and her team to tell you a little bit more about the Early Learning Center they created, the children that it impacts, and the impact it's had on the community. Alfreda, kicking it off to you.
Thank you, Kyle. It is such a pleasure to be with you this morning and to share in this extremely, very important conversation around supporting young children and their families. The Advent Health for Children West Lakes Early Learning Center, we want to just spend a little of our time just kind of sharing our story. And I wanted to share our team members who have joined us today. We have Maria Katz, who is our education director, and also Jessica Gallo, who is our director from Advent Health for Children for specialty care. And again, just wanting to share just the beginning, the middle, and kind of where we are today. About 5 years ago, Advent Health had gotten some information, some data around emergency department visits, and they were seeing that there was some overutilization in emergency department visits, especially from the zip code 32805. The other thing that they were seeing that was, again, concerning is that there was lack of medical access. So again, for the same zip code, there was roughly 12 medical access points, whereas in a few miles away, 32789, there was 112 medical access points. And so, of course, that conversation started occurring, like, how can we get in front of families? How can we support families differently so that we can provide medical access and support in health and wellness? So simultaneously, as these things were occurring, some other partners who have been in this work were having other conversations as well. Primrose Schools is out of Atlanta, and they were looking at how can they expand their balanced learning, their research-based balanced learning approach to all children, especially children who are in under-resourced areas or come from families who have high needs. And our seed donor, who was a part of this work out of Bethesda, Maryland, is the Bainham Family Foundation. And they provide a lot of initiatives for early learning opportunities and was looking for an opportunity that made sense to them as well. And here in what's called West Lakes, it's an area that's been coined or rebranded by the community. Over time, there's been a lot of disinvestment in the area. And that has created these pockets of need, and they have become a part of what's called a purpose-built community, and that collective impact model where they drive investment from cradle to career. The Early Learning Center here is allowed to be a part of that first step in that pipeline. And usually when you're doing this work within purpose-built communities, their initiative has you have a community quarterback that kind of serves as a catalyst to get all these groups speaking and talking together. And what we've created today is the West Lakes Early Learning Center, which provides three significant components. Advent Health, being a mission-based organization, knew that this commitment is one to health equity as well as education equity. And so it provides three components, which is high quality early learning, It also provides comprehensive services. So all of our children are screened for various needs and then connected to resources to have that therapy and those services provided on site, which is our biggest differentiator. And then our last component is we have an on-site pediatric clinic that not only provides services for the children who are enrolled, but all children in the community from 0 to age 17. And so these are just, again, some of the innovative and creative opportunities as these organizations came together. And AdventHealth said, we want to make a difference. We want to make sure that health equity and wellness is a part of this entire plan. Now, our next part that we want to share is, where are we today? What does the Early Learning Center look like, and what do we actually provide? Maria will lead us in that.
Thank you, Alfreda. Hello. So it was great listening to the first few people speaking, because everything they said resonates with us and is exactly why we are here at Westlake's Early Learning Center. So I have a lot of numbers, but our favorite number, and Kyle kind of linked to this, is that the first 2,000 days matter the most. We kept kind of hearing about those third grade reading scores being the end all be all, but as you know, the research is very clear. If you go into kindergarten already behind, it is so difficult to catch you up to put you on grade level in third grade. So we're really big believers in those first 2,000 days. And our other favorite line is that there's no achievement gap at birth. So that's how we always start, and like to share that. So just a little bit of where we started. We did open on April 20th, 2020. If any of you remember, you were probably at home then, because that was during the pandemic. And we, AdventHealth was bold enough to open for our essential workers, and we started with 28 children. We currently have 146 children, and we have a large waiting list. We have 10 classrooms, 40 staff members. So we got a lot of numbers going on here. As Alfreda said, we use Primrose Balanced Learning Curriculum. I heard a lot of people speaking today saying daycare. We are very proud that we call this an early learning center. We are focused on academics, but we take great care of children. And we think that's important in the early learning environment. It elevates everyone, especially the teachers. We do implement that balanced learning curriculum beginning in our infant room. They have lesson plans. They have units that they complete all the way to VPK. We also are implementing AdventHealth's Creative Kids curriculum for that social emotional piece. And I'm sure everyone knows and hears on the news now about the need for mental health for children. And so that's a great piece where we look at those creation principles of choice and rest and environment. Our VPK children follow the Florida standards and take their benchmark progress monitoring assessments. And we're so proud every year. This will be our third year with our graduating VPK class, but our first 2 VPK classes, we sent all of our children off kindergarten ready based on those STAR early literacy scores. So that is a huge accomplishment. We feel like the elementary schools in the area are recruiting our children for their programs because they are ready to go. Another piece that we think is so important is parent education. Again, we have the children a certain amount of time, but we think it's so important to provide our parents with information. Our mascot is a little bird, and his name is Kip, and that stands for Knowledge is Power. And on the last Thursday of every month, we provide that education for our parents on items like digital parenting, pre-literacy skills. Coming up in June, swimming, information about that and being safe and the heat. So we're constantly doing that to help our parents be the best that they can be. Looking at my notes, making sure I hit on everything. I know Alfreda mentioned our comprehensive services, and I know Jessica's going to talk a little bit about that, but that is, we say prevention is the cure. Early intervention makes all of the difference. Many of our children will receive speech language right on site, and our speech language therapist said that the children do much better because they never miss an appointment. They're right on site. So that is a huge game changer. And we would love to see that in other programs. And we are supporting other programs in the area, sharing that model and implementing that model of comprehensive services. So with that said, I'm going to let Jessica share a little more information.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us today. It's a pleasure to be a part of this panel and to learn from all of you experts and to be able to share a little bit about our journey in the West Lakes community. As Alfreda and Maria mentioned, one of the most important things for us as we were getting involved in this project and starting this early learning center was having a very holistic approach to implementing services in the space. So we knew that having, as the representative mentioned, when you have young children, that is such a big impact to your family life. And we wanted to make sure that we really wrapped the families that were a part of our center and within the community with a lot of different services. We know that education is extremely important, and we wanted to make sure we had that high quality education available. But we also knew that when people aren't feeling well or they have other stressors in their life, that sometimes impacts their ability to learn. So we wanted to make sure that we had services in place that would help the children in the center, as well as their extended family within the community and other members in the community with any of those stressors that they might be experiencing. So not only did we know that we needed to have a health access point on site, providing your standard medical care and evaluation, standard immunizations, sick visits, all of those health access needs, but also we wanted to provide what we called comprehensive services. So we have a comprehensive services coordinator that is on site as well. She meets with every single family that comes to the Early Learning Center and does an assessment of all of those things that might be impacting the family outside of the early learning space, and says, what can we do to partner with you and help you with any of those things that your family is experiencing, whether that's connecting them to resources, or like Alfreda and Maria mentioned, we actually bring a lot of different services on site to screen our kiddos. So if we can see, okay, is this child developmentally developing appropriately? Are they meeting their speech and language milestones? Are they having any challenges with their gross motor or fine motor skills? Do we need to provide intervention there? Are there behavior concerns that we're seeing? Can we do some screenings and possibly get them into some therapeutic intervention, whether that be applied behavior analysis or even mental health therapy, which, believe it or not, does actually exist for the 0 to 5 population. And not only did we want to make sure that we were providing those services directly to the children, we also wanted to make sure that we were providing services to parents, because we all know that if the parents are not involved and the parents are not invested, then the child is less likely to be successful, or the caregiving system that is supporting the child. So we have parent-child interaction therapy, we have support groups just for the parents, and we have support for our staff members as well. We've partnered with many different organizations to bring that expertise to the center, and really just our goal is to wrap all of the people that are coming into our center and in the surrounding community with anything that we can in order to support them. So it's been a pleasure to work with the Early Learning Center. We also put a strong emphasis on supporting the local community by hiring locally. That was really important to us as well, to make sure that the staff that were coming in, you know, are a part of the community, and we can provide an emphasis on how awesome this community is and how those kids get into that pipeline of schools and into that career later in life. So thank you so much for having us. It was a pleasure to be here.
And we definitely want to emphasize the community. This community is rich in legacy and history, and they really wrapped around us. They invited us in, and we worked together to align with some of their needs as well. So when I say community, the thought is, oh, yes, those children and families who are a part of the Early Learning Center. No, there were families and residents who were here who don't have children that are meeting our enrollment criteria, meaning that they're not 0 to 5. but they've lived here for years, and they are second owners of, or second generations in their homes, and they have such a love for young children. When we first opened April 2020, we had residents outside it was dark that morning with signs saying, "Welcome to school. It's your first day." So really walking alongside with them has been an incredible experience. They serve on our ELC advisory committee. We have 3 residents who participate in that and help us with our decision making, help us with our next steps. And also every year they come and they bring all of their artifacts and things that they have to create a Black History Museum, which is amazing. It was actually featured this year on the news, just highlighted to show the pride that the residents in the community have. And that's been really a great learning and a great growth experience for us.
And right now in the building, this very minute.
Oh, right now, that's
we
right.
have 10 readers from organization in the community here reading in every one of our classrooms. They came in at 10 o'clock. So it is wonderful for our children to have that piece and part of that.
And we just also wanted to express that all of our staff are staff of Advent Health. So it provides, again, another sense of professionalism to early learning. Our staff are given the same benefits, the same opportunities as any other Advent Health employee, which is huge. Mm-hmm. There's a health incentive. If you know your numbers and find out where you are on the health scales, you can acquire some monetary stipend. They receive bonuses and raises.
They pay for your education. If you want to go to school, it's fully paid for.
Mm-hmm. And again, we're able to provide salaries that are a lot higher than in traditional settings, right, because of, again, we have to be at the same level as other Advent Health employees. So that's been incredible. And we also have additional partners that have provided us with some grant funding to assist with enrichment, to assist with some other components outside of operations to support families differently. But we have to be very clear and very honest that a model like this is an expensive model. So when we think about sustainability, that piece is, it's really about businesses, the nonprofit sector, as well as the government sector coming together and supporting work like this, with someone saying, "I'll take the first step," or "Let me try," or "Let's see what we can create together." And so I think that's really the uniqueness of this program, is that so many people came to the table saying, "Well, let's see and let's try." And that's really how we, even though we have some protocols in place, that's really how we approach it. Mm-hmm. What is best for us? What can we do? One of the programs that we just started not that long ago that I'm super excited about because I love data is we call it MTSS rounding, where we have all of our therapists and all of our teachers who work in a classroom come together and just to discuss and share what are best practices. How can we support that child better? What are we learning? I mean, it's just, we had to extend the meeting from, it's weekly, it was 1 hour to an hour and a half because we have so much to share. But it's been a great journey. We are looking forward to what's next for us. We'll be celebrating our next birthday this coming April. So again, we are definitely thankful and grateful for allowing us to have this time to share with you, and would love to have you come out for a tour if anyone is interested, or if you'd like to learn more about the Advent Health for Children Westlake's Early Learning Center.
Alfreda and Jessica, Maria, everybody, thank you guys so much. I mentioned this in the chat. I've had the opportunity to actually tour the facility, meet with some of the team, hear about some of the results, and it's absolutely incredible, inspiring, awe-shocking, everything, every adjective you could imagine. What I think is so important in the context of this conversation and really should be underscored is this early learning center services one of the most impoverished communities in the entire state of Florida. Now, in that community, there is incredible collaboration between Lift Orlando, the Paramore community themselves, Advent Health, the Boys and Girls Clubs. There's a lot of great work being done there. But what you can see is that when thoughtful planning, processing, and executing occurs, you reach outcomes that otherwise would not have been possible. Having 100% of your kindergartners ready is an insane figure. Like, you are creating that pathway to kindergarten readiness, which will create that pathway to third grade reading, which will create that pathway long-term to a very successful career. We've actually done analysis on this, and it leads to hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional income over one's life and a reduction in the usage of social benefits of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you guys are doing incredible work. I think it's such a great example of what a business at the size of Advent can do when they really put their mission forward and they serve the community. So thank you guys for that great effort. I do want to answer a quick question I saw in the chat before we jump on to kind of some closing remarks and what's next. Ken, Ken, I was with you just a couple days ago, so it's awesome to see you here in the chat, my friend. What can smaller size businesses do? I think it was discussed a little bit during Representative McFarland's section, but that policy is so unique because what it allows you to do is benefit from any single tax credit that you can really think of: sales tax, insurance tax, obviously corporate income tax, but it's very expansive, and it allows you also, if building a facility on site isn't feasible, it allows you to support your employee at $300 per month per child as they access high quality childcare. So that can be up to $3,600 a month or a year for a parent with one child under the age of 5. And again, will $3,600 change the market? Will it solve every problem? No, but it's a huge support structure. When we look at potentially supporting up to a quarter of those costs a month, that's $300 that a parent can now put towards their housing, their food bills, their transportation. It's $300 a month that parent doesn't have to have that burden. Additionally, the way it's structured, it doesn't actually affect the parent's income threshold. So it's not counted as taxable income because it's going directly to a facility or an early learning advocate in that community that's going to be paying it on their behalf. So it allows an individual who may be benefiting from a social benefit to not fall off what is called that fiscal cliff. So big proponents here of HB 21. Our policy team, led by Carolyn, who was on the call earlier, and Frank Walker, are really leading the charge on that at the Capitol. In fact, I know CJ already ran out of here to head back to the Capitol to get some work done. So if that passes, it's a great opportunity for our businesses to not only support the talent that they have, but potentially attract and retain talent by being able to provide that benefit. If we jump to just some closing slides, I want to go ahead and thank everybody again for joining, not only our individuals who joined on the call, but our panelists, our speakers. I think this was a great conversation and a very timely one. These occur every single month, and next month will also be presented by Helios, so thank you again, Charles and Helios, where we'll have a conversation around education in the state of Florida. It's going to be occurring on April 28th, so please set your calendars. There will be a registration link in the follow-up email here to sign up, and it'll be a really interesting conversation. We talked about kind of that 0 to 5 spectrum today on that K through 12 and beyond. Additionally, we have, again, these every month as part of our Florida Quality of Opportunity Initiative, and one of those summits is coming up in just a couple months. So on May 25th, if we go to the next slide, we can see that we have our Prosperity Summit taking place in Jacksonville at the Hyatt Regency. Please register today. There's a few weeks left to get that early bird rate, and reach out to me if you have any questions about that event. It'll be an incredible conversation that takes place all day. It'll be business leaders, it'll be philanthropic leaders, it'll be policy leaders, all gathering together to not only discuss what challenges we're facing, but more importantly, a culmination of what's happened over the past year to overcome those challenges and where we're headed next. We plan for these to be really action-oriented, and more importantly, we plan it to be everybody's conference. So if you have a topic, if you have a conversation you really want brought to life, whether it can take place in that forum or in one of our webinars, please reach out to our team and let us know. Again, thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you next month. And if you have any questions at all, please reach out, let us know. But thank you for being part of this movement.